Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. I'm your host, Jacob Edens, and today we're going to be taking a deep dive into assumptions, the law of assumption. Because what can happen sometimes is if you have affirmations and thoughts and things of that nature that are not backed up with concurrent assumptions about the situation, then what you can essentially experience is chaos and an experience of being out of what you would consider integrity or alignment, right? Not from a moral perspective, but from an accuracy perspective of your world unfolding in the interplay that you have chosen. So, for example, when you are operating an assumption, okay, an assumption is similar to if I have a fridge and I have milk, eggs, and an orange in the fridge, okay? I open the fridge, I see milk, eggs, and an orange in there, okay? I shut the door. Now, without my five senses being able to see that, my assumption is that milk, eggs, and an orange are still in that fridge, even without my five senses understanding that, right? Same thing could be considered for if you have a car in the garage. I don't physically see my car right now, but there's a knowing and there's an assumption that this car that I own is in the garage, right? I have an uncontested assumption about how my reality is organized in principle, okay? So what you want to understand is most people form their assumptions based off of what you would consider a personal experience, right? Oh, I open the fridge, this is in here, that's what I'm going to assume. Oh, I parked my car there this morning, I assume it's there, right? So nothing wrong with that. Completely natural, completely logical. When you want to exercise the law to restructure your reality from an internal point of power, right? Say you go into the fridge, you see milk, eggs, and an orange, and you go, you know what else would be good here? Some beers, right? Now, if you're not operating through law of assumption, what you would do is you would essentially say, okay, I need to go get some beers. Let me go get some beers. Let me go to the store, get this, this, and this, bring the beers back, da, 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 da. All a physical linearized process, right? Which is perfect for things that you already understand how to create because you understand that there's a process, you can go execute, da, 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 right? Now, if you're creating something new or you want a custom designed element of your reality to be a certain way. So if you want to have, something that you never had and you have no idea how to do it, right? Or you don't want to do a process and put power into a process that you don't like. You just want your reality to play out a certain way. For example, having money come in every single day, being in really good health, whatever, right? You want to understand that assumptions can be used to actually change the physical third dimensional realm, right? So for quick recap, third dimensional realm, physical, touch it with five senses, external, right? Internal, fourth dimensional realm, more subtle dimension. I can hold this wallet in my hand. I can also hold it in my mind, and I can feel the contents of the wallet with my, what Neville Goddard would call inner man, right? I can feel the texture of the wallet. I can feel the weight of it, and that's all in my mental space. That's a fourth dimensional reality, right? It's all the same reality, but just for clocking and being able to register different aspects of reality, we use these terminologies. So when you are essentially opening the fridge, you can hold an assumption that the beers are already in the fridge in your inner mind, right? So you hold that assumption. Now, when you make that assumption from the position of having just opened the fridge without the beers in there, your five senses will deny that that assumption is true. Okay, so this is where you go into what's called faith and persistence, because in a higher keyed up version of reality, i.e. a lucid dream, you would assume that the beers are in your hand, and then you look down and you go, oh my God, there are beers in my hand, right? But in this reality, it's a slower keyed down reverberative reality in which you have what is called a bridge of unfolding incident, right? So the second that you hold the assumption, right, you close the fridge door, you assume now a new bold assumption that there's a six-pack in your fridge, right? You hold that assumption, you open the door, there's still no six-pack because you're in the reality that was essentially printed out from the old self-concept, your old identity that assumed certain things, because your old identity didn't assume there are beers in there. Now you made a new assumption. You're a new identity living in a physicalized world that has crystallized around your old identity, okay? okay? So you have to understand that interplay, or else you will put validation on the external world, right? You'll go, oh, wait, I assume this and it's still not here, right? Well, what are you doing? You're immediately putting yourself back into the identity that doesn't have it right now. So what you're doing is you're denying your five senses and you're putting the validation on the assumption as the proof, okay? So what you're doing is you're detraining yourself to essentially allow reality to dictate your assumptive mechanism, right? Your fourth dimensional thought process. Because if you understand that reality is just an end result of that fourth dimensional mind space of your previous assumptions, you can depower it because you understand that it's only going to reflect those assumptions that you have consented to, agreed to, and persisted in, right? So as you understand that, you can decrease the importance level of what you would consider already manifested, right? Manifestation is a fancy word for unseen to seen, right? So if you're a creator being and you have ideation and then you want to influence the external world, that's thoughts to things, right? How does a thought turn into a thing? Well, a thought is a thing in of itself. It's just not incarnated into a third dimensional specific reality. So how do you incarnate something into a third dimensional reality? Well, you hold that as a fact in your assumptive space and allow the external world to wrap itself in that third dimensional reality. Much in the same way that this microphone was created, an individual had an ideation of this microphone. They saw it in their mind, they thought about it, etc. And then the reality helped them bring that into creation through their focus and will. So as you understand that, you can begin to act as the operant power in your reality rather than the person who's being bullied by external circumstances all the time, right? Because if you can depower and defang the external realities that you've created that are not in alignment with your choice, your will, what you can do is you can understand that they are just products of the identity that you've accepted of yourself, right? So as you become more aware that it's just reflecting those internal assumptions, you can really master the skill set of using that assumptive practice to really curate and cultivate the exact reality that you want, right? So to go back to the beers, right? You hold that assumption that those beers are in the fridge. You open the fridge, there's no beers. Open the fridge, there's no beers, right? That's a third dimensional action. Where you want to place your emphasis and your power is on where that assumption is in your fourth dimensional mind. In the same way, if I have car keys in my pocket, I assume they're going to be in my pocket, right? I have that knowingness. I have that internal experience of having them, right? So my internal experience should be fixed and static no matter what is playing outside of me, okay? Meaning that when I make that assumption that there are beers in there, it doesn't matter what I see outside because that's a latent reverberation of previous states of consciousness within which I have inhabited. So now I'm inhabiting a new state, which means that I am new. The external reality is not new. But as long as I stay consistent, loyal, and faithful to that imagined end, imagination, right? Imagination is your hope of victory and glory because it allows you to occupy subtle versions of reality that are not yet manifest. So if you don't have imaginative capability, then you are at the mercy of exclusively second cause, which is total enslavement to your external reality, right? If you don't have the ability to change the patterning, change the assumptions, and change your ideation of the situation internally, then there can never be an external reflection, right? It's why people call you the source of your reality, because you're quite literally a battery, right? Take your soul out of your body, what your body falls over. So reality in a greater context could be considered your external body, if you will, right? This body of context and contents, assumptions, belief systems are all mashed together to give you a perfect representation of what you assume to be true about the world. So as you go through this process of reconstructing your world into what you want, you're changing those baseline assumptions to match the experience that you want to have, and you're giving yourself that experience internally, understanding that the external is going to reflect that as you create it internally, which puts all power back into your center, which means that anything that you're a part of, you have the ability to override it, assume different, and hold that assumption in the face of all sensory data from your 5 senses, right? Because what happens is your external reality can't validate you because it's not constructed on the new version of yourself that you're inhabiting currently. So it is, in a very real sense, at odds with you because you're different. It's like if you say, you're in a poverty-stricken environment and then you say, I'm rich now, right? But everyone around you is still in that poverty environment. They're going to go, no, you're not. Look at you. Look at this. Look at this. That's because they can't see the internal assumption that you have changed. They only are basing their own assumptions off of what they see, which is what 99% of people do. They see something and they assume that's the truth instead of understanding that their assumptive capability has the ability to make the reality more malleable through the states within which they inhabit, which is a powerful thing to understand because now nothing can reign over you. So I know you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave comments for future videos. Linktree has all the coaching as well if you want to work with me. And more important than any of that, go conquer. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.